Cheese and Blaze. Many talent groups have a few friendly animals or insects who help out with various tasks. Cheese and Blaze are the animal helpers of the Tinkers. Cheese is a field mouse who spends most of his time in Tinker's nook. The Tinkers aren't sure what his name really is, but his ears prick up when he hears the word cheese. So that is what they call him. From pulling carts to gnawing through twigs, Cheese is always ready to lend a paw. Blaze is a special friend of Tinkerbell's. She met him on an adventure, and the two quickly became inseparable. Blaze is small for a firefly, but makes up for it with his big heart. He's always doing something useful, like lighting tricky corners of complicated jobs. Animal friends. Though there are many working animals in Pixie Hollow, such as Cheese and Blaze, there are also creatures who are mainly just companions to the fairies. Fairies often befriend creatures related to their talents. Fast-flying fairies have a special affection for speedy birds like tree swallows. Light fairies adore fireflies, and the water fairies get along very well with the fish. The water fairy Silver Mist even has a little goldfish in a pool at her house. Some fairies are allergic to animals. These fairies often keep close company with spiders instead. A spider can be just as affectionate as a ladybug or a goldfinch. And it is much cuddlier than a fish, though water fairies may disagree with that. Pixie Dust. Every Never fairy receives a sprinkling of exactly one level teacup, fairy size of course, of pixie dust per day. The dust is distributed at the pixie dust tree by fairies of the Dust Keeper talent. If a fairy can't make it to the tree, the dust talents make sure they get it to her wherever she is. Pixie dust aids flight, enhances magic, and acts as an all-purpose helper for fairies of every talent. Water fairies use it to get just the right sparkle on a windswept pond. Light talents make rainbows with pixie dust, and tinkers put it in nearly everything, including glue, spackle, and sandpaper. Fairies use a combination of their natural abilities and the magic of pixie dust when they are practicing their talents. Fairies receive no more and no less than their daily allotment of pixie dust. When a fairy sneezes, the pixie dust can be temporarily knocked off her. The Pixie Dust Distribution Depot. The shimmering pixie dust well is cupped in the heart of the pixie dust tree, but fairy magic really shines down in the Pixie Dust Distribution Depot at the base of the tree. Here, the dust talents sort, process, and measure out golden pixie dust. In true fairy fashion, the bustle at the depot looks chaotic, but somehow everyone always gets their daily teacup, come rain or shine. The Dust Keeper talent. Dust keepers are responsible for the collection, measurement, and distribution of pixie dust. They monitor the pixie dust well and run the depot. They make sure every fairy gets one level teacup per day, no more, no less. Generally a modest talent, the dust fairies are actually some of the most important figures in Pixie Hollow. Every dust keeper has his or her favorite teacup. Each holds exactly the same amount of dust, of course, but there is tremendous variety otherwise. Most dust keepers don't require the daily teacup because their work keeps them thoroughly saturated with pixie dust all the time. A dust keeper's morning route. The fairies of Pixie Hollow usually gather at the pixie dust tree to receive their daily sprinkling of pixie dust. The fairies of Pixie Hollow usually gather at the pixie dust tree to receive their daily sprinkling of dust, but sometimes a fairy is too sick or too busy to come by. It's especially common for fairies to be too busy to come get their daily dust during the turning of a season, when every fairy in Pixie Hollow and on the mainland is working as hard as she can. That's when dust keepers like Terrence step in and start delivering pixie dust personally. Terrence is a social fellow, so he always enjoys visiting fairies in their homes or workshops to deliver a sprinkling of dust and have a conversation. And if Tinkerbell is one of the fairies on his list, so much the better. Terence and Tink are the best of friends. And Terence is always happy for the chance to say hello and admire whatever new invention Tink is working on. Here is a map showing Terence's delivery rounds on a typical busy morning in Pixie Hollow. Pixie Dustology and the Hall of Scepters. Some dust keepers are great scholars. Since pixie dust is the most important element of the Never Fairies magic, they have always been eager to understand it as well as they can. There are even fairies who devote their whole lives to studying its properties and recording the results of their experiments. The field is called Pixie Dustology, and there is an entire section of the library filled with tomes of its lore. Pixie dustologists can often be found among these stacks of books, or in a little room in the pixie dust tree where they keep their extensive collection of dust samples. Countless little jars each contain a bit of pixie dust from every season as far back as fairy memory goes. Blue pixie dust. Once in a great while, a blue moon rises over Pixie Hollow. This is a signal to the fairies that the time has come for the pixie dust tree to be rejuvenated. A fairy is chosen to craft a scepter, and when the light of the blue moon shines through the moonstone in the scepter, it creates blue pixie dust. This dust has the power to replenish the tree. If the pixie dust tree is not replenished every blue moon, it will wither, and the pixie dust will flow no more. Once it was Tinkerbell's job to create a new scepter to hold the moonstone. Her efforts took her far and wide, all across the Neverland, and beyond its shores. In fact, she almost wasn't ready when the blue moon reached its peak. But Tink prevailed, and the tree was saved again. And now Tinkerbell's scepter has joined countless other masterworks in a chamber of the pixie dust tree known as the Hall of Scepters. Fairy Gary. Just as Fairy Mary has become the undisputed leader of the Tinker Talents, Fairy Gary is in charge of the Dust Keeper's fairies. Most often to be found at the Pixie Dust Distribution Depot, Fairy Gary has a genius for organization. All the other dust talents report to him throughout the day on the level of the well, on any variations in the quality of dust it produces, and on whether any fairies have missed their daily teacup. Based on this information, Fairy Gary makes the decisions that keep the dust flowing freely and the depot running smoothly. There are 14 different fairy languages and dialects in the world, and Fairy Gary knows how to say pixie dust in every one of them. Pixie dust diving. Occasionally a fairy will accidentally drop something in the pixie dust well, usually a shoe or a button, but on one memorable occasion, an entire mouse-drawn wagon. When this happens, Fairy Gary dons his diving suit and goes fishing. Pixie dust in fairy home life. Hoarding pixie dust. Just because a fairy receives a teacup of dust every day doesn't mean she uses a teacup every day. Many fairies set aside a little bit for their daily sprinkle for special projects. Iridessa, for example, has been filling a glass lantern bit by bit with pixie dust. When it is full, she plans on giving it to her friend Fyra, another light talent, to hang in her room. One garden talent keeps her extra dust all to herself. Some fairies have pet plants that get a little pixie dust with their daily watering. Pixie dust tools. Fairy Gary doesn't need to hoard pixie dust. He's permanently dusty from his job and has plenty to spare, but he does have a collection of a different kind. The largest teacup collection in Pixie Hollow and probably all of Neverland can be found in Fairy Gary's home. His teacups are of all shapes, but each holds exactly one level teacup, just the right amount for a fairy's daily sprinkle. It has taken Fairy Gary many years to build his collection. He found some of the cups, but most of them were gifts. When Fairy Gary's arrival day rolls around, his friends always know what to give him. Fairy Gary is especially proud of one teacup in his collection. Tinkerbell found it washed up on the shore of Neverland. It was part of a human toy, fairy tea set, and it is precisely the same size as a real fairy teacup. The Mainland. Fairies and nature. The Never Fairies spend much of their time working to bring the seasons to the human world, which they call the Mainland. These tiny creatures are responsible for many of the most treasured aspects of each season: painting the flowers in springtime, ripening plums in summer, creating brisk autumn breezes, and carving snowflakes in winter. The preparation for a coming season can take months. While some fairies are busy with winter on the mainland, others back in Pixie Hollow are already gathering supplies for spring. There are rainbows to be made, spring showers to be bottled, ladybugs to be painted, and seeds to be sorted and packed. When it is time for the turning of the season on the mainland, the fairies assemble all their supplies, which are packed into baskets and boxes and bags, and fly to the mainland in a grand procession across the sea. Once they arrive, they begin the happy work of ushering in the season. Every fairy has a part to play in the turning of the seasons, even sour-tempered Vidya. This fast-flying fairy creates wind to funnel pollen out of the flowers during the preparations for spring. The Queen. The turning of the seasons is overseen by the fairy's queen, Clarion. No one in Pixie Hollow knows if Queen Clarion ever had a traditional talent like the other fairies do, for as far back as anyone can remember, she has led and inspired all the fairy talents. Clarion is certainly the most powerful fairy in Pixie Hollow. Her understanding of fairy magic is so complete that she often travels as a beam of pure pixie dust. She may sometimes seem remote, but there has never been a kinder queen. Although she can be firm when it is called for, Clarion is even-handed and understanding. She loves all her fairy subjects, and she would do anything for them. Queen Clarion is set apart from the other fairies by her large wings, her pixie dust hemmed gown, and of course her sparkling tiara. Fairy jewelry. Fairies, like birds, are attracted to anything that glitters and shines, especially jewels and precious metals. You would be hard-pressed to find a fairy who doesn't have a few treasured pieces in her jewelry box. Fairy jewelry tends to be highly detailed and dazzlingly shiny. Some pieces are made by the fairies themselves, and others are found objects or gifts from other creatures. Tinkerbell has a bracelet that she made herself from a never silver fairy fork. She only wears it on special occasions because she doesn't want it to get dented or scratched. The light fairy Iridessa likes to wear glittering clips of polished mica in her hair every now and then, and even No Frills Fawn has a seed bracelet made for her by a friendly shrew. Fairies and humans. When the fairies of Pixie Hollow travel to the mainland, they try to avoid being seen by humans. They do much of their work at night. In the daytime, fairy scouts stationed high in the trees keep a close eye out for humans. Despite their care, fairies are sometimes spotted. Occasionally, a human child will catch a glimpse of a shining wing or see the glow of a fairy moving through a garden late at night. And although they prefer to work unseen, fairies like to make their presence felt in other ways. If a human child leaves an offering of honey and milk in an acorn cap, a fairy will be happy to help herself. She may even leave a little present as a thank you. The Scout talent. The Scouts have plenty to do in Pixie Hollow, where they keep fairies safe from dangers such as hawks, storms, and wasps. But they have a lot of work on the mainland as well. These dedicated hyper-alert pixies perch on strategic posts and keep watch for nosy humans. When a human is spotted, the Scout sounds a warning, and all the fairies know to make themselves scarce. The Scout talents have a number of tools of the trade. Every Scout carries a set of twig and leaf binoculars, an ultra-high frequency whistle, so high only a fairy can hear, and a bow and arrow. Kensington Gardens. Although the fairies of Neverland bring the seasons to every nook and corner of the mainland, there are some spots they especially like to visit. One of these spots is Kensington Gardens, a beautiful park in London, England. It is a lush oasis of nature in the middle of the city. The Fairies attraction to Kensington Gardens has led to more than the usual number of sightings by humans. As a result, the fairies have become associated with Kensington Gardens in human folklore. Neverland. The inhabitants of Neverland. As fond as the fairies are of the mainland, their true home is Neverland. This magical island is not on any map. Indeed, it floats freely across the sea and goes wherever it likes. If Neverland does not want to be found, it won't be. But if it welcomes you, you will have no trouble making your way to it. In addition to the fairies, Neverland is also home to a few humans. Captain Hook and his pirates spend most of their time in their ship, the Jolly Roger, anchored in the cove or sailing in the waters off the coast of Neverland. And Peter Pan and his lost boys live in a hideout in the densest part of Neverland's jungle. Visit Mermaid Lagoon, and you may catch a glimpse of a mermaid sunning herself on a rock. A climb up Torth Mountain will bring you to the cave where the dragon Kaito is imprisoned, and if you make the perilous trek north of Neverland, you may even meet a pair of trolls. Peter Pan's drawing of Neverland may be crude, but it's the most complete map anyone knows of. The Trolls. Tinkerbell is one of the few fairies who have journeyed over the sea far north of Neverland. She went there in search of the mythical Mirror of Encanta, which was held by fairy lore to be in a pirate shipwreck. She found the mirror, but she also made some other astonishing discoveries on her journey, including the bridge trolls. These two creatures guard a bridge on Lost Island, north of Neverland. Though they do their best to scare off any passing travelers, they often get distracted while squabbling with each other. Anyone wishing to cross the bridge must simply get them into an argument and slip past. The shorter troll has a pet rock named Harold. Fairy modes of travel. Tinkerbell was able to travel off to the northern tip of Neverland, but she couldn't do it by herself. A fairy has only a day's worth of fairy dust on her, and without the enchanted dust, fairy wings can only keep their owners in the air for a few moments at a time. The fairies call this dustless fluttering chicken flying. When Tinkerbell traveled north, she invented a balloon carrier so she wouldn't have to walk once her dust ran out. Since then, these carriers have become a routine way of getting from point A to point B for the Never Fairies. But the fairies have many other clever modes of transportation besides balloon carriers. Fairies also travel by boat, usually made of leaves or bark, raft, bark or twigs, cart, twigs again, and of course on the backs of their animal friends. Some fairies use their talents to create vehicles. Light fairies run across rainbows, and water fairies create waves to surf on. If you're not in a hurry traveling, on the snail shell is a very dependable way of getting somewhere, but keep in mind it may take you several weeks. Fairy helpers. On any given day in Pixie Hollow, the Never Fairies have many important tasks to accomplish. Luckily, much of their work is aided by their animal and insect friends. The Scout Fairies, with the help of animal talents, train bugs, mice, and even small predators to keep Pixie Hollow safe. Birds, butterflies, and bats assist in moving supplies from Neverland to the mainland during the changing of the seasons. Messenger pigeons carry notes across Pixie Hollow. Friendly spiders weave fabrics, which is used for clothing, decorations, nets, and ropes. Every once in a while, the fairies will find a baby animal that has been orphaned or lost. On one memorable occasion, the animal fairies found an orphaned wildcat kitten. This kitten was taken in by the Scout Fairies, who, with help from the animal talents, trained it to go on patrol. Pixie Hollow has never had a fiercer protector than that wildcat, who was named Tiny by the Scouts. Fawn. The animal fairy Fawn is bold, brave, and a bit of a rascal. This merry fairy is always ready to play and the more rough and tumble the game, the better. Fawn is mischievous and a born prankster. She likes to play tricks on her friend Iridessa. She speaks many different animal languages, but the burp-like toad speak is her favorite. Like a mockingbird, Fawn can replicate any bird song if she hears it just once. She uses her talent frequently, talking easily with any bird. The other animal talents know to go to Fawn if they want to hear the latest Pixie Hollow avian gossip. Fawn isn't all pranks and tale-telling. She's got a heart the size of a watermelon, and it shows. There's nothing as patient and kind when teaching baby birds to fly in the spring or when singing bears to sleep in the winter. Fawn's favorite toy is a hedgehog made from a horse chestnut. This was a gift from Tinkerbell for Fawn's arrival day. She keeps it safe at home so as to avoid having one of her animal friends eat it by accident. Pixie Hollow, a fairy paradise. Pixie Hollow is truly a hidden haven in the wilds of Neverland. Surrounded by hills and mountains, the fairies' home is a wide forest valley spotted with streams, flower patches, and meadows. All the Never Fairies live here, along with many of their animal friends. The magnificent Pixie Dust tree grows in the very center of Pixie Hollow. Its roots extend all the way to the edges of the realm, and the tree spreads its magic throughout this enchanted valley. Queen Clarion and the ministers of the season live high in its branches, but the rest of the fairies have their homes tucked away here and there throughout the valley. Pixie Hollow is divided into 4 areas, one for each season. These seasonal realms do not change. It is always winter in Winter Woods, for instance. Springtime Square, Summer Glade, and Autumn Forest are also each eternally in the height of their respective seasons. And in a miracle of fairy magic, these neighborhoods sit side by side throughout the year. Life in Pixie Hollow is busy because fairies enjoy the hustle and bustle of their work. But these tiny creatures never forget to take a break to enjoy the beauty of the world around them. Fairy leadership. Queen Clarion rules over Pixie Hollow, but no one fairy, not even the queen, can keep track of all the details involved in bringing the seasons to the mainland. Luckily, Pixie Hollow has 4 ministers. These fairies each organize and direct a different season, and they all report to Queen Clarion. The council chambers are in the Pixie Dust tree, not far from the rooms where Queen Clarion and the ministers live. There the queen meets with her ministers and other important figures such as Fairy Mary, and Fairy Gary. Culture in Pixie Hollow. Fairy life is filled with many different forms of art and creative expression. Some fairies are born to it, the painting talents, or the reed flute players, or the wind dancers. But even those fairies whose talents lie in other directions have their moments of artistic inspiration. A water fairy, for example, can never help bursting into song on a rainy day. Art is also one of the ways fairies preserve their history. A stained glass window in the Pixie Dust tree tells the story of Winda Quickwing, a legendary hero of Pixie Hollow. And of course, there's fairy tale theater, where depictions of fairy myths and histories are spun out of Pixie Dust itself. The fairy dance. The fairy dance brings together the arts of dance, music, and fashion at every full moon. Even the ever-busy light fairy, Fyra, takes time to put on a new dress and enjoy herself at the dance.